Welcome to the Accu-Trade Window Podcast. In this episode, Bob talks about second opinions and the rental car industry's involvement in wholesale purchasing and market reports.
Good day, everybody, and welcome to this week's Window with Robert Hollinshead. Bob, we're going to go through a few different topics today. We'll try to keep it as brief maybe as possible. We'll see what happens. What's on your mind going this week? A lot, I assume.
Well, it's been a couple of weeks since we've done these things. I don't know if anybody cares, but we'll try this anyway because I had a funny thing happen to me. I was sitting with my consigliere, my lawyer, and, we're talking about a couple of things that we have going on, a couple of contracts we're dealing with, whatever. And, the idea of second opinions came up, right? So as I was thinking about it, you got a little cancer on your face, you go get a second opinion, you got a kneecap that's like twisted the wrong way, you got to go get a second opinion, right? You're sitting there with your lawyer and you're talking about an opinion of what you do with how you handle the thing, and then you go get a second opinion. And as I'm thinking about this, it's so comical. What about appraising cars? You follow me? What about a second opinion, right? So every doctor, the expert, because your doctor referred you to the expert, and the expert knows, and you're sitting there like cannon fodder, just sitting there listening, right? But the truth of the matter is, if you went to 23 different doctors, you'd get 23 absolutely different opinions. Maybe not for an eye doctor. I'm talking about a normal thing. Yeah. And a lawyer is identical to that. You got one you trust. It's all they got, right? But in other words, if you went to 23 others, you absolutely would get 23 completely different opinions. About, I'm going to guess and say 30 years ago, right? We did a thing at NADA, we got 23 used car managers together, like good guys, like from big stores, know exactly what they're doing. You put a $20,000 car in front of them, and what do you think you get? 23 different opinions that range by about $8,500 on a $20,000 car, higher or lower, right? So then when you stop and think about that, that's not really an exact science at all 30 years ago, or 20 or 10, but it's even worse today. So when you put that into perspective today, and we use different methodologies of, coming up with a number, but then when you throw the one constant that, regardless of what anybody says, they don't use MMR, MMR is this, it's that, it doesn't make any difference what they say. Absolutely, it's a standard that since Hal Logan started it with Mannheim Interactive, absolutely has been a standard. Anybody says it's not, don't believe anything else that comes out in front of their teeth, because they're talking, they're full of shit. Now, the fact of the matter is, today, it turns out to be relatively worthless for the simple reason, if you're a dealer that doesn't have the capacity to deal with the best end user, the person that's the last bidder on a car, that then shows up on a market report, you are actually swimming in deep water without a life jacket, really, because you got to picture this, and I don't want to over exaggerate this, but if you don't consider it, you're definitely confusing yourself. We have like the Hertz Avis Enterprise, names other things that are in our arena. When I say our arena, the wholesale arena, buying cars that have absolutely no intention of how they use it as the end user. So in other words, they're not buying and selling cars. They're buying a car, they're renting it for $200 a day. They rent it for 3 months. They got all their money back. So the $18,000 Corolla they paid $23,500 for, it's irrelevant. It's completely a moot point, means nothing, zero, because in 60 days, they got all their money back, right? Now it's pure profit. They're not selling anything, but they were competing with dealers in order to acquire the cars, right? Now, with this beautiful deal that they made with Carvana on the back side of it, they have absolutely fluid liquidity on the other side when they're ready to get rid of it, right? So it's a circumstance now when you're looking at a market report, you're sitting there scratching your rear end, deciding what number you're pulling out in order because you did all your hocus pocus and sell it to the bottom and we'll make $3 in the shop, et cetera. Total nonsense, total and absolute nonsense. Total and utter nonsense. Because especially if you're sitting there with no inventory and you got to find cars somewhere, and you're bidding against people that aren't in the same business that you're in, it becomes like a very odd set of circumstances. Now, obviously, that's not going to last for the next 12 years, right? But in the near future, because if you read the rags, they say that the rental car companies are going to be last to get inventory and stuff. What that really means is, in the near future, name a month or, a semi-year or whatever you're talking about, you're going to be competing with people that aren't in the same business to acquire cars. Now, where that really gets weird is sitting in the showroom and you say, well, okay, well, I don't go to the auction. And that's true. Only 5% of dealers actually participate in an auction, buying cars. It's a very low number, and that's the other thing that's kind of weird at the moment when we talk about this. The market is unbelievably good, but it's not the same as it was 2 weeks or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 weeks ago. It's a little different. It's a little bit different. It's not the same. It's a little different. Now, what that means is you're not blowing through the market report by 2 and 10 and 25,000, which we did a number of different times. Right? What you're doing now is in certain instances where, let's just say, Hertz and Avis don't have interest in a unit, you're getting to a point where it's getting a little weird because you're sitting there, scratching your rear end, trying to figure out why you're falling 3,000 and 5,000 under the marketplace. You start checking your breath to see if you stink and, did you take a shower 5 minutes ago to make sure you ain't got no body? Something's wrong. Something ain't right. You follow me? And what really then, now we start taking a few more layers off, and then your post-sale preventions, the post-sale inspection turns out to be a reason to prevent a sale. And then we have buyer's remorse to top that off. All of a sudden, they start increasing. You see, another pure and absolute indication that we've reached the top and people are starting to do a double take. And then we take in consideration, we'll have an inventory. But you know what happened? Somebody got the message from their factory rep that someday they're going to have inventory. Because it was only a few months ago. They're never going to have cars again. It's over. So it don't matter what you pay. You got to go get cars and you put them out front. And you can't worry about selling them to the bottom because then you'd be selling them to a wholesaler that actually is paying you $2,000 over retail, take them to the auction and making $6,000, right? So you can't do that. Okay, but once you get that threat, and then you're sitting there, well, if you're responsible for the inventory, whether it's a GM that gets paid on the gross or if it's a used car manager gets paid on the gross, and you start doing the examination up and down the, let's call it up and down your front line, back line, whatever, in recon, getting ready to go, right? And you start thinking about that I think what happens is the panic attack starts to set in. Whether you admit to it or not, don't matter. You get that little thing where, somebody's sneaking up behind you, and you follow me? And because you're looking 30, 60 out, and somebody said you might get a car someday, a new car might show up. And then what do you do? Because you own your front line for $2,000 or $8,000 or $10,000 more than what a new one is. You know what I mean? And because of that, here's what I noticed. See, we pay very close attention to things. You know what I mean? Like things, different things. And one of the things that we pay attention to is how many bidder badges were there for the day, right? It doesn't mean nothing. How many proxy bids are there for the day, right? Doesn't mean nothing, except it's a direct one-to-one relationship. So who's in the stands and who's on the field, right? And when that number starts to change from X number 1,000 to a different number 1,000, whoopsie daisy, what you wind up with is, empty stands. More importantly, less people on the field, right? So when you got that little shock when you hey, you might get cars someday. Survey your front line. Ooh, Chris can't say nothing about it because you're the one that bought them, right? You can't you can't say, hey, we're in trouble, boss, because you'll be clean your desk, pal. Move your nameplate to your next place of employment if you can find it, right? So you can't do that. Can't do that. But what happens is you start doing the back step, off the field and over to past the cheerleaders and then up into the grandstands to watch what's going on. You see what I'm saying? I'm watching it on different platforms, different, we won't name which ones, but different platforms, remarketing things sell here because it's the best and all that type of thing. And when you're watching and there's nobody paying attention on the exact same cars that there was fever pitch, fist fights, spit flying everywhere, we're going to buy better than you and all that. It ain't happening. I'm not saying the market's crashing. Believe me when I tell you it's not. I don't think it's crashing at all. However, there's a little tiny bit of a thing in the air that without any question or doubt, there's zero question that it's a thing. It's not a thing. It's definitely a thing, however, where we're going to see a little bit of a little adjustment here a little bit. You follow me? Now, it's never going to, Johnny.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I was just going to say.
But it's never going to adjust as long as you got the lunatics buying cars. As long as there's Avis and Hertz, you're still going to say, oh, my God, look what they paid for that car. You see what I'm saying to you? So it's the same thing with post-sale prevention. It's the same thing with, having trouble getting to a number as things start to ease off just a little bit. These are all indicators. It's what I call strikes. It's the strikes in the market where now Carfax starts showing up. Auto checks start meaning something. Why didn't that car bring any money? Because you've been ignoring it for the past 4 or 5 months. And all of a sudden, well, it's got a little touch on the facts. Oh, minor. It's like, I'm almost pregnant. I'm not pregnant. Oh, no. It's got a touch on facts. You're definitely pregnant. Because you've eliminated all them hush puppy buyers, right? People that are worried to death they didn't have a perfect car and they paid too much, but it's perfect, and therefore they can sell it because if it's got a little smudge someplace, then it becomes like, it's a pariah, right? You start to see these things, and it's popping up as we speak. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Shawnee Meagler. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to mention how I do, even though I'm up in the hinterlands, and tune into your lanes on Friday. And I was actually kind of noticing that a few cars were back from MMR, still being sold, but
we're selling. We're selling straight through. Yeah. Johnny. Make no mistake, because in other words, MMR is not like the gravitational denial, and that then leads into there's a couple times a year where MMR or the market report is 1,000% your best ally. When I say an ally, unbelievable ally. Because don't forget the 95% of dealers that may open it up and look at it, that don't participate in the auction marketplace, 95%, sir, just so you know, they have no concept of how that thing actually is nothing but a historical report of what happened when a car actually got sold. You know what it doesn't report, though? You got to bear this in mind, Sean. I've said this 84,000 times to many people. Always falls on deaf ears. You know what it doesn't report, right, Sean? What is it? No sales. See, a no sale don't show up on there, Mo. They do put OVE things in there where somebody bumps their head, pays too much. They do show up in there, but they don't show up when you no-sailed 17 in a row and sold one. The only one that shows up is the one that got sold. So you got to picture this. If that's true, this is not your ally. Because if you got to go get the other checks for the other 16, you got to fish a little. You got to fish a little deeper. You got to, your risk level increases a little bit, right? So when you're sitting there trading and thinking about 60 out, right? Or 80 or 90, or you're never going to sell nothing except to the bottom when somebody puts a car offer in. These are things that at this moment, MMR is your enemy. it's definitely your enemy. Even whether you're not even aware of it or not, it's your enemy because the historical information is going back a week, 2 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, some goofy car, 8 months, and popping up with some wild number. And, here's another really interesting thing to me. Again, it's only because I think about things that mean nothing, right? But people love throwing stones at Carvana, this and that, right? And it's really comical to me because they don't really think one level under the onion. Just peel it one more time, just one more thing, and you're going to see different things. It's no longer red. It's now white. It's different. But you looked at it, it was red. How could it be white in the next layer down? Well, Wall Street said this and that. The admin title. Yeah, you got to picture something. Everybody says Carvana's up. They're paying crazy money for. No, Carvana bids on cars based on like proxy, and when they stop bidding, the best end user shows up. At the end of the day, we might sell them 2 or 3% of our cars, right? So it turns out not to be a significant number. Obviously, the cannon fodder bidding in between makes people think when they're bidding against them all day, they're buying every car in the auction. Now, here's the problem. When they buy a car from somebody that actually is buying trade-ins or is back in a dealership, or, in terms of when they're trading a car, they got the bank there, they're going to get a check for it immediately. Or, we're buying cars off of our tool. When we pay for that car, that title could be 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 and sometimes 8 weeks away. When that occurs, right, and we sell it, obviously, we sit on nothing. We're selling everything the same day. We buy it, we bring it in, we get it ready, bring it to the next level, make sure this, that, and the other thing is done. The car looks gorgeous. We sell every car that gets the auction block, and somebody buys it. When they actually buy it, take it home and sell it, of course they're going to have an issue with the admin of the title. It's got nothing to do with them. It's got something to do with the process, how the wholesale industry actually functions. You see what I'm saying to you, Sean? It's really interesting how we love to throw stones at, in my opinion, very smart people. They're finding ways to actually evolve our business. It's really forcing everybody else to actually do their mimic or their version of it. I mean, that's unquestionable. Whether, how it all comes out in the wash when it's all said and done, nobody can predict. Jesus couldn't tell you that. Muhammad couldn't help you with that. But, from my perspective, it's really a simple answer. So over the past week or 2 weeks, we're looking at, in our management system, says previously sold cars coming back, right? And there it is. There's 35 or 40 cars coming back from Carvana. Of course, it's a knee-jerk reaction to whatever they're facing in social media or whatever you want to call it in the news. They're unable at this point to actually buy cars that, you're not going to have the title the following day, so that it doesn't back them up. It's totally understandable. But it's very interesting how people see it. Going back to the topic, I'm sorry to get off the topic, Shawnee. At this moment, I think it would be very safe for people to understand that it's not like I'm professing something that I know anything, but to be, I would say, a little bit more cautious than normal with MMR, reporting historical data, in many cases in that middle mud category cars, that the low mileage, later model cars under warranty that you have the rental cars bidding on, they're not actual transactions. They're fake. And you can't make your judgment based off of that, because you're going to wind up with flies in your soup. Won't work out.
Have a great Thanksgiving, Bob. We'll get this out.
I hope everybody has a great holiday as well.
Thanks for listening. Tune in every week for a new episode where we chat with Bob Hollinshead, founder of Accu-Trade and the largest independent vehicle wholesaler in North America.